what I want to do is spend a little bit of time then talking about Reich's understanding of the idea of armor and the somatic armor, which is essentially the character armor, and how that works in its relationship to emotion, and then do a little bit of a demonstration with the person laying down, bringing that in front in terms of some of the somatic, one of the ways of working in this somatic way. The way I think about it is that it's not like two worlds. It's not like these two worlds. Like, oh, we're going to do this thing, and then we're going to do that thing. But they're one thing. The capacity to be empathic, to feel into the other, to engage and understand their phenomenology is a crucial element to then working somatically, especially when you're having a person do stuff that for periods of time is less verbal. Right? Say, how do we know what is going on with the person? And the way he would say it is we know it because we feel it in our own body. Okay, coming back to the question, how much of this is back and forth? We feel the other through ourselves. Okay. So there's observing, just like this hearing is observing, but then that observing in part or partially or maybe more than partially is what you feel in your own body because we resonate. Okay? We are tuning forks. Take a tuning fork, and then the other fork goes, and the C, the note of C, gets on the note of C. We are human instruments. I think of ourselves as essentially instruments. And if we can tune into the other person's affect, we tune in through our own instrumentality. That's how we are somatically engaged with the other person. Now, let's take just the analogy of the tuning fork, which is not really a good analogy, because a tuning fork only has to C or a D or an A. But we have a whole range. We're chords, we're chord progressions. But if we take that tuning fork and we dip it in cement, it ain't going to vibrate. If we take our organism and we rigidify it in some ways, it ain't going to vibrate. And if it ain't going to vibrate, we're not going to feel. And if we're not going to feel, we're not going to express the feeling. And if we don't express the feeling, the other is not going to feel the feeling because it's not expressed, because we're not vibrating, because we have been put into some net. And so what does that have to do with anything? Okay. What that has to do with anything is that armor, from Reich's perspective, is a kind of putting into cement. Meaning it's a contraction of our system that rigidifies it. It's a contraction of the system that rigidifies it. And once it's rigid, we cannot vibrate in the way we need to vibrate. So what does that mean? How does that work? Well, let's say you grow up in a family where you're enraged, but you are punished for rage. There's good reason to be enraged. Rage is a natural reaction to assault, to threat. It's a way that we assert ourselves, the way we get boundaries, the way we possibly change an environment. But let's say then the rage is stopped. Okay? And we contract back. And we do that in a repeated way. That expression of rage, and rage has a feeling. It has a facial expression. It has something you do with your jaw, something you do with your eyes, your eyebrows. Some way that you're breathing, some way that your arms tense, some kind of posture that you engage in. And if you have to stop that, you have to retreat from that. You have to pull that back, literally stop that movement. Emotion is motion. You have to stop that movement. What do? We contract against it. And those movements, those vibrations, literally are stopped. The muscles that are engaged in the movement of them have to be inhibited in some way. We have to either contract those muscles, or we have to contract it and then let them just dissolve. Either way, we stop the movement. Either aspect is what Reich called armor. That is that armor, though, in the way the person now stops their rage, or their assertion, by maybe standing back, by looking down, by not looking up, by not making eye contact, by avoiding in some way, and staying in a certain kind of posture. That is their character. Okay? There's no separation. That is their character. That is what is presented. Character is in the musculature, is in the holding. And the way then the person thinks, anger is a horrible thing. And I read it in X number of books, and I learned it in my psychology program, nonetheless. Anger is a horrible thing, or other people can get it, but I am above that, or whatever. All of those thoughts, all of those emotional schemas that are represented cognitively are representations of what is there physically, are representations of what is already there in the body. But of course, we thematize it and we symbolize it because we're human beings. But it's there in the body. So as long as it's there in the body, it can't really be changed. As long as till the body needs to change. Okay. So that's where Reich's idea of the character armor and the identity between the character and the somatic armor. The somatic armor, how we hold ourselves, how we breathe, what we tense, what emotions we allow movement and what we don't. And all of this is situational too. We might allow ourselves to be emotional in one situation, not in another. They're all field dependent. Okay? But once we are armored in a certain way, then that becomes unconscious. And we're not aware. I'm not aware that I speak in a certain way. I'm not aware that I continually avert my eyes. I'm not aware that I hold my head down. I'm not aware that when you say something to me that I don't like, I turn away, or I growl at you, or I become sarcastic, or whatever it is, or my arm tenses up. I am not aware. And I'm not aware because you don't want to be aware. You don't want to be aware because the whole function of repression is not to be aware. The whole function of repression is to repress that which is threatening in the environment. And it does no good if you're aware of it. Because if you're aware of it, you might slip up and do it. But if you're totally unaware of it, it's gone. In other words, repression lives in the character. Repression lives in the body. And it is unaware. So we are unaware. So, if the goal of therapy is to, in Gestalt terminology, bring awareness, we have to bring awareness to the character and to the muscular attitude. But how do you do that? Do you do that pointing it out? Yes. But that's just the external observation. How does the person become aware of what they are feeling or expressing or not feeling or expressing? Is through actually beginning to move in ways that they weren't moving so that they can feel the difference and begin to feel into the experience of the block. So, in other words, this is all therapy. The only way through resistance is to feel the resistance. If this is resistance, it's called resistance. The only way through a resistance is to feel the resistance. To feel it, to understand it, to embody it, to know it. And then we can move through it by first feeling. That's the character analysis. bringing it into an experiential reality. And not to really see it as, oh, you're supposed to jump over. You can't jump over it. If you could jump over it, it wouldn't be there. You can't jump over it. What you can feel first is contact with how it is, how I am. And then by doing something different, you experiment with how it feels to be somewhat of it. And then you have new experience. And it's new experience that leads to change. That's how we learn. We can't learn just by sitting and thinking about it. We learn through, like the child who's jumping and turning and picking something up, through engaged experience. So, we have this functional identity between character and somatic harmony. It's there, it's present in all of us. And what does that energy, what does that do? How does that work? Just very briefly, how does it work? There's energy in movement. Okay? There's stopping. So there's a binding of energy. There's a stopping. Where does the energy go? It goes into the tension that's in the stopping of the movement. But what happens then? Okay? The person can't move in the world and complete things. So there's more energy that doesn't get expressed in the world. And what happens to that energy? Well, we start to feel that energy inside ourselves as energy that can't move, can't flow in the world. And how do we experience that? We experience it as not feeling very good. We experience it as anxiety. And if it's dead, we experience it as depression. We experience it as isolation. We experience it as disembodiment. We experience ourselves in a trap. And all of our clients will talk in one way or another about how they are in a trap. There's the trap of their environment, and that's a reality. But there's the trap of the internalization of the environment, which is not just mental, it's a somatic reality. And that is the trap. And that is the I can't. And that is the anxiety that is fueling us. And that's the inability to pay attention. And that's the disassociation. That's all the trap. And energy that cannot flow is experienced in this particular way. We call that symptoms. Okay? That's the symptomatology. And that's where Reich said that all symptomatology is anchored in the character. It's anchored in this somatic reality. So, to change that, we have to help the person change that. And what happens as that happens is this energy gets freed up. And people begin to experience more. Sometimes they're not very happy about what they experience. If you've been deadening your rage, you're going to experience rage, and that's not going to be happy, and may not make other people happy for a period of time. If you've been deadening your grief, you're going to feel that, and you may not really like that. You know? If you've been freezing out your fear, you're going to feel that. And there's no way around it from this theoretical somatic perspective. There's no jumping over it. There's no, yes, there's helping a person create a window of tolerance, meaning not to become overwhelmed. But in that window, really what you're doing is you're developing a window of tolerance where the window gradually gets high, more and more and more and more and more. Because what are you tolerating? You're tolerating life. You're tolerating ionergetic pulsation. You're tolerating what it is to be alive that you suppress. So, armor. Armor stops emotional experience and expression. And this is a key element, is that when you have armor, the expression is stopped, but simultaneously the experience. Not only do we stop our expression, but we deaden ourselves to the experience. So the armor itself becomes a wall, a literal wall. Okay? Because it's somatic, because we're embodied, this is literal. This is not analogy. a literal wall between you and yourself and you and the world. Between you and yourself and your feeling states and you and the world. Okay. The cement is a literal wall. And you on the other side where people feel the wall. And you on the inside of that feel your wall. And we all feel our walls in one way or another. So, honoring stops the feeling of aliveness, emotional expression, emotional feeling, emotions, all the different emotions. And the goal of therapy, gradually, in this way, is to help a person tolerate more and more emotion, which is truth. Because how do we know it's true? We know it's true through our sensation. We know it's true because we sense the world, just like any other organism. Even an amoeba sends out its little, feels the world, retracts back, or goes and ingests, or whatever. We feel the world. We know the truth through that engagement, through that movement. And when we block it, we lose contact with the truth. The truth on the outside, the truth on the inside. So, as Reich in this story, this is a story, as Reich began to observe this in his clients, he began to say, well, what happens if you actually, now that I see how character is located in the soma of the person, let's say I attempt to address that directly. Let's say as I notice that people inhibited their breathing whenever they stop an emotion, you can try it. You can try it, and I guarantee you will feel this. If you want to stop a feeling, stop your emotion. Stop your breathing. Stop your breathing, you will stop it. You can do it. You just stop. Now, you might start feeling another thing, like breathless, and you might feel terribly anxious, and you might feel, but you will stop a certain kind of feeling if you stop your breathing. If you want to feel more, breathe more. Okay, that's Pranayama 101, 201, and 701. You want to feel more, you breathe more. But Pranayama 101, 201, 701, if you want to manipulate your organism to have different kind of biophysical states, you manipulate your breathing. Okay. Breathing is central to a sense of aliveness and freedom. Reich's work with breathing was not to manipulate, but to restore it. To when you're happy and you're jumping, you breathe in a certain way. And when you're sad and you're crying, you breathe in a certain way. And when you're frightened and immobilized, you breathe in a certain way, etc., etc., etc. So breathing, which brings energy, motility, movement, brings excitation. And then the organism says, I don't want this excitation. It's threatening. We know what happened. I'm not going to be fooled again. So, calm down. So, breathing leads to defense. Okay? Defense becomes observable. Defense then becomes put as a figure. Defense becomes felt. The world that you're in right now with the therapist, maybe in this kind of way of dropping, of slow, becomes a different world. Then maybe there can be some experimentation with some other ways of being in the world, with other affect. That becomes potentially possible. New feelings emerge. But it's not all joy and wonder. Like I said, usually it's the other way around. Usually what happens is as you feel more, you contract against it more because it's threatening, and you have to go through it. And you as a therapist have to live that journey with the person. So what Reich was able to see as he began to work directly with the somatic arm, what did that mean? That meant, okay, breathe in a different way. What it meant is I'm going to press on a muscle that's very tense. Can you feel the pain? Okay, you can't move your arm. Push against my arm. See what that feels like. Okay, you're afraid of really, you're afraid of being held. Let me hold your hand. Or hold this and see what it feels like. It meant engaging the person's somatic reality. As he began to do that, he noticed the ways in which emotions moved and stopped. In other words, the way we are instruments. And one of the things you'll note, you hear yourself, is that when we talk about expressing an emotion, most emotions, when we talk about where we're expressing it and where we're holding it, people talk about where it happens in their life. But like choking over crying. Or there's a pain in my heart. I feel sadness in here. Or I can't let the tears out. And usually there's a movement like this. Emotions come from the core, from the center. Come up to the world. Which makes sense, because that's how it is with infancy, right? That's the first thing, the face, the eyes, the meeting, you feel. And so Reich saw that another way, a way of working with the somatic arm, a way of working with the person, a way of working as we're sitting there, is to bring the emotion up and out and with. The only reason we have emotions and the only reason we convey emotions is to understand and be understood. Our emotions are meant to be in the world. They're meant to be seen, to be resonated with, and attended. The infant cries, to be held. Protests, to be understood. Runs away, to the attachment person. Cries, so that they're held. And we do the same thing. Bobby was right. We never get out of the attachment phase, where attachment is there from birth to death. And if that is the case, then all of these responses continue with us. They don't change. We don't grow out of them. We modulate it, we're different. The 7-year-old is different than the 2-year-old, and the 14-year-old is different than the 7, and the 47-year-old is different, and the 74-year-old is different. And yet, at the core, we're all the same. It's all happening in the same place. We have the same. So, Reich called his work Characterological Therapy, which was a long name, and it didn't really work that well, but I think it was a great name, actually. Yeah. Well, what do I know? Characterological, we already talked about that. Characterological. Vegetal therapy, well, that's from the vegetative nervous system. That characterological, but with the vegetative nervous system, we're working with the vegetative autonomic. Now we call it the autonomic nervous system. We're working with the autonomic nervous system because that's the nervous system that regulates our energy, regulates our energy. And it's character analysis in the vegetative, not vegetables, but vegetative alive, in the vegetative realm. It's character analysis in the vegetative realm of making a person understand the expressive language of the living and feeling themselves. And we can do that through our interpersonal contact, through our conversation, but also through asking people to engage in somatic activities that can bring the energy up, bring the armor to the surface, allow you to address the armor with them, and a collaborative effort to lower that, and then change that, and then feel different states of being. And that's what happens. So, as Reich was doing that work, of course, when he was doing work, he was doing psychoanalysis, so people were laying down. So it only made sense that as he was working biophysically, somatically, with people, they would be laying down. And so a lot of this work is a person laying down. And I don't know if you've done psychoanalysis. Most people have not done traditional psychoanalysis. Has anyone? Traditional psychoanalysis? Yeah. Okay. What was the experience of weighing down?
It was good.
It was good. Yes. It was good. There's something about weighing down. It's good. It puts you in a different space. A different kind of space with yourself, a different space with the world. Biophysically, it puts you in a different space. Your postural muscles don't have to be working. You can let your head down. You can feel the support of the mattress, of the couch. Okay? You can surrender to ideation or surrender to feeling. It also puts you in a more vulnerable space. Okay? You don't have some of your protections. You're not face to face. You're not standing. You're laying down. Person is not like this, like this. There goes the power. There's the power differential. There's the vulnerability. But you're in a child space. You can get into child fear. Maybe go allow yourself to reach for that which you never could reach for. And it can be a frightening space. It's a different space. So that's the space. One of the spaces. You can work, right? Work with people sitting up, but it's different. But the other thing why it's different is you breathe differently when you're laying down. You breathe differently. You are sitting up, like I'm sitting up. There's a compression. I'm compressed. My diaphragm can't move down as much as my abdomen can't. Okay? And there's a compression. Way down. It's possible. And really, what happens when you breathe is your whole body moves. Your whole body. You do some craniosacral therapy for a while. You'll feel your whole body. You'll feel the flow. You'll feel energy moving. Your whole body moves. So, in a sense, whenever we restrict our breath, we restrict parts of our body, and our body doesn't move. Anyway, so that's part of what Reich did in terms of working somatic. It helps a person get in touch with their awareness. But it's always done in a relational way, because it's all about relationship. So that's where it's different than craniosacral work. So that can be very relational. But we relate in terms of it's kind of looking at the emotional patterns, the resistances as it comes up. So there's a back and forth between somatic work and verbal interaction, back and forth. But you as the therapist are doing the same thing. You're doing the exact same thing. You're attending, you're feeling, you're reflecting, you're being with. Okay. That makes sense? Is that a picture for you? Good. Yes, please.
I just wanted to throw in, I think one of the things that almost probably all of us have heard is, as we're getting started with someone, when we ask them something, they say, I don't know.
Yeah.
And it's like right there.
Yeah. That's right. And why don't they know? Because they don't know. That's right. I remember somebody in one of my trainings said, I never understood. How could they say I don't know? They thought they were just defending themselves, or they were putting it on, or some approach me. And of course you know. No, they don't know. They don't know. And they can't know until they know. Right? And that's something to really honor. Glad you brought that up. Something to really honor. You don't know until you do know. So, we'll do this demonstration here. Somebody be willing to do this. One of the things that I, as a therapist, I'm very keep aware of a number of things I put in here. One, always aware of a person's eyes. That's why a lot of this work is not done with a person's eyes closed. Your eyes closed, you're somewhere else. Now, sometimes it's important. Close your eyes. Get into yourself. but then come out and come into the world. It's all relational. Very relational kind of approach. Restore therapy by relational kind of. So the eyes, I'm aware of the eyes. Even if a person's eyes closed, you can watch a person's eyes. What's that? Are their eyes moving? Are they not moving? Watch a person's eyes. Okay. Another thing, I ask you, there's only two takeaways. One takeaway, any takeaway. One, watch their body. Second, watch their eyes. Okay. Eyes. Okay. First thing. Second, the voice. Listen to the voice. The voice is the musical instrument that carries the words. You can say the same word, and it will be very different depending upon your voice. I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm scared. Different meanings, different expressions. Listen to the voice. Oftentimes, what you hear in the voice is you don't hear much of anything. You hear atonality. You hear the absence of vibration. If a person speaks like that, they're not going to hear it either. They're not going to hear their feeling. They're not going to know their feeling. And the person in the world is not going to know it either. People can say, I said that to the other person. And they did say that to the other person, but they never said it to the other person. They never said it because it wasn't carried by the expressive language of the word, by the voice. Listen to the voice. Listen to the voice. Third, watch the movement. People are moving all the time. Even in their stillness, they're moving. They have to be moving. Else they'll be cadavers. And then you'll be doing a different kind of work. Okay? So, people are moving all the time. Watch their movements. Because they're very subtle movements. Very subtle movements. But you watch the movements. And then you can hear, listen, understand. But also notice that seeing, eyes, hearing, watching is not just done, it's done with your whole organ. You feel their words in your body, you can feel their movements as you emerge. So, getting back, what is somatic psychotherapy? Is that we're all somatic. Okay? We're all going to be engaged in this embodied interaction, in this embodied.